Have you ever noticed that some people seem completely detached from the world of social media? They don't get caught up in endless scrolling, notifications don't dictate their day, and they don't constantly need validation from likes or followers. They're present in ways that many of us don't even know how to be anymore. And yet we can't help but feel a tinge of curiosity, maybe even envy. How do they do it? What's the secret behind their ability to ignore the addiction that seems to consume the rest of us? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The reason they're not addicted to social media isn't because they found a way to escape it. It's because they've never fallen into the trap in the first place. In a world where scrolling through your feed has become second nature, where your sense of worth is often tied to the number of followers or likes you have, people who aren't addicted to social media are an anomaly. They don't live for the dopamine hits. They don't refresh their apps every 30 minutes to see if they've missed anything. And for many of us, that's incomprehensible. But what if I told you that this ability to remain unaffected by social media isn't about willpower? It's not about self-discipline or being better than the rest of us. It's something deeper, a mindset that shapes how they see the world, themselves, and how they interact with the digital age. Let's break down this psychology piece by piece. The first layer, the nature of connection. At its core, social media is all about connection, whether it's connecting with friends, family, or even strangers who share your interests. For most people, it's a form of social validation. The more likes, comments, and shares we get, the more we feel recognized and valued. But for those who aren't addicted to social media, the need for that type of external validation doesn't exist in the same way. What's their secret? They don't base their sense of worth on digital approval. They know their value is not determined by the number of people who view or interact with their content. Instead, their worth is intrinsic. They find connection in the physical world, in real-time interactions, and in moments that can't be reduced to pixels on a screen. People who are free from social media addiction are often deeply connected to their own sense of self. They don't rely on others to confirm who they are. They've discovered something important. True connection happens beyond the screen. They're the ones who don't need to know what you had for lunch or whether you're at the gym. They're comfortable in their own lives and they aren't seeking validation from an audience. Their happiness isn't tied to the approval of strangers on the internet. It's tied to their own internal sense of contentment. The second layer, a strong sense of identity. Another fascinating thing about people who aren't addicted to social media is their deep sense of identity. They've cultivated an internal compass, a strong sense of self that is unaffected by the ever-changing trends, opinions, or judgments that flood social media feeds. For many of us, social media is a platform for comparison. We see what others are doing, how they're dressing, what they're achieving, and it's easy to feel like we're falling behind. But for those who aren't addicted to social media, this constant comparison is simply irrelevant. Why? Because they know who they are. Their sense of worth doesn't fluctuate based on the lives or choices of others. They aren't constantly asking themselves, what's everyone else doing? They're more concerned with asking, what do I want to do, and what does my life look like? This isn't about being arrogant or self-centered. It's about being so comfortable with who they are that they don't need to define themselves through others. They have their own standards, their own goals, and their own path, and social media is not the yardstick by which they measure their success. The third layer, mastering distraction. In a world designed to grab your attention at every turn, it's easy to become consumed by the constant flow of new content. But for people who aren't addicted to social media, this is less of an issue. They're experts at avoiding distractions. Think about it for a moment. How often do you check your phone out of habit with no real purpose? How often do you find yourself scrolling without even thinking? Social media platforms are designed to keep you engaged. They pull you in with endless streams of content, notifications, and the promise of something new and exciting. But those who aren't addicted to social media have mastered the art of resisting these distractions. How do they do it? They focus on the present moment. They don't need to check their phones every few minutes. They don't get caught in the endless loop of what's next or what am I missing. Instead, they engage fully with the world around them, whether it's reading a book, having a conversation, or simply enjoying a cup of coffee. They're not afraid of missing out because they understand that true fulfillment comes from being fully immersed in the present, without the constant pull of digital notifications. Social media is a distraction for them, not a lifestyle. The fourth layer, purpose over popularity. For most of us, social media is a way to gain popularity or recognition. But for people who aren't addicted to it, it's not about the fame or the likes. It's about having a sense of purpose and direction in their lives. They're motivated by things that matter deeply to them, not by the validation of a crowd. This can be a powerful realization. When you don't need social media to feel important, you can put your energy toward things that actually matter, your goals, your passions, your purpose. People who aren't consumed by social media often find themselves focused on more tangible, real-world pursuits, whether that's their career, relationships, or personal growth. In many ways, social media can distort our sense of purpose. We get so caught up in trying to look a certain way, portray a perfect life, or measure our worth against others, that we lose sight of the things that truly give us meaning. For those who aren't addicted to social media, the opposite is true. They know what gives their lives meaning, and it's not measured by likes, shares, or followers. It's about living in alignment with their values. The fifth layer, emotional resilience. Another defining trait of people who aren't addicted to social media is their emotional resilience. Social media exposes us to constant judgment, outrage, envy, and sometimes cruelty. Every scroll can trigger subtle anxiety or self-doubt, but those who aren't addicted develop a natural immunity to these emotional triggers. Not by ignoring the world, but by choosing what they allow into their mind. They don't let comments, trending topics, or online drama dictate their moods. They understand that the digital world is a reflection, not a definition of reality. While most people get swept up in fleeting emotions triggered by likes, shares, or online arguments, these individuals remain anchored. They cultivate an internal calm that is rare in today's hyper-connected world. This doesn't mean they are detached from emotion or unempathetic. In fact, they often experience emotions more deeply, but in a controlled, grounded way. Social media doesn't amplify their emotional highs or lows. It simply isn't a factor in how they measure life or relationships. Their emotional world is theirs to navigate, not an arena for validation or comparison. The sixth layer, self-awareness and reflection. One of the most striking aspects of people who avoid social media addiction is their high level of self-awareness. They understand themselves in ways most people rarely explore. They know what triggers their anxiety, what energizes them, and what drains them. They notice patterns in their thoughts and behaviors without needing external cues or digital reinforcement. This self-awareness allows them to make intentional choices. When they do use social media, it's deliberate, perhaps to stay informed or connect meaningfully with someone, but it never becomes a compulsion. They understand that technology is a tool, not a necessity for self-worth or fulfillment. In a sense, they are the masters of their attention, and attention is the most valuable currency of our time. The turning point. What this really reveals. By now you might be wondering, are these people just lucky? Are they somehow wired differently? The answer is both yes and no. While genetics and upbringing play a role, what really sets them apart is a conscious approach to life and choice. Their detachment from social media isn't a random quirk, it's a reflection of deeper psychological principles that anyone can understand, even if it feels out of reach. Think about it. Social media thrives because it exploits human tendencies. Our desire for connection, our craving for validation, our need for novelty. People who aren't addicted have either learned to navigate these tendencies differently, or they have naturally stronger internal frameworks that guide them. Either way, it's a window into how human psychology works. And here's the counterintuitive part. This resistance to addiction doesn't make them better or superior. It simply reflects a different strategy for navigating life, a strategy focused on presence, internal validation, emotional resilience, and purposeful action. In a world built to manipulate attention, their way of being is quietly radical. The broader human lesson. What this teaches us about human nature is profound. Social media addiction is not just about bad habits. It's about how our brains respond to reward, attention, and social cues. It exposes the vulnerability of our minds, the fragility of external validation, and the complexity of our desires. And it also shows us that not everyone falls into the same patterns. People who aren't addicted remind us that the way we live isn't inevitable. It's influenced by our choices, awareness, and inner life. By observing them, we can see a reflection of what's possible. A life where attention is deliberate, self-worth is internal, and emotional energy is protected. A life where we are not slaves to notifications, endless scrolling, or the comparison trap. The personal reflection. Now here's the quiet question you need to ask yourself. How much of your attention, and ultimately your life, is being dictated by a digital feed you don't even control? How often are you measuring yourself against images, opinions, or curated realities that have nothing to do with your actual life? And if you wanted to, how could you begin reclaiming that attention, that presence, that sense of intrinsic worth? Because the truth is, whether you realize it or not, your brain, your attention, and your happiness are being shaped by forces designed to capture them. People who aren't addicted to social media have simply decided, consciously or unconsciously, that their inner life is more valuable than a fleeting dopamine hit. And the more we study them, the more we learn that this isn't just about apps. It's about the psychology of presence, autonomy, and human fulfillment. So the real takeaway isn't about giving up social media entirely. It's about recognizing the psychological forces at play, understanding how they affect you, and asking, do I want to let these forces define me, or do I want to define myself? Because when we finally notice it, the answer often changes everything.